Funerals often cost anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000, and many times that's money families don't have right away, especially when a death is the result of gun violence. 6 News' Taylor Johnson is on your side this afternoon with how a bill in the Unicam would help lift that weight.
Nothing eases the pain of losing a loved one.
Nobody expects to have to bury their child.
When Christina Young lost her daughter, Jaquila, to gun violence in 2015, it came at a hefty price. There was life insurance to help, but not immediately.
The cemetery does not wait for the life insurance money, so you have to have that $2,000.
Too often, families are left scrambling to pay for funerals.
You'll find families that are, having fish fries, or, they'll start a GoFundMe.
Tamika Meese of North Omaha Community Partnership says their crisis assistance program helps offset costs. Nebraska's Crime Victims Reparations Program also reimburses victims' families, but that takes time.
They have to come up with those funds first, have the funeral, and then submit documentation with their application and wait. Right now, it's about 9 months.
LB 1225, a bill introduced by Senator Terrell McKinney, would make it easier for families to get the money up front. It would appropriate $2.5 million from the general fund to the Nebraska Commission on Law Enforcement and Criminal Justice for things like mortuary services for violent crime victims.
The organization would essentially house the grant, and our partner organizations that are already doing the work in the community would be eligible to receive funds to support their initiatives.
One of those partners is Families of the Stolen. Founder Buffy Bush is launching a funeral network where businesses will offer free services from church locations to clothes for those being laid to rest.
It helps relieve the major burden, and it still allows your family to bury your loved one or send your loved one home beautifully, respectfully.
Bush says while violence is ongoing, what's being done right now to help families is what's critical.
We are holding each other up through these moments because they're not going to stop.
On your side in North Omaha, Taylor Johnson, 6 News.
Taylor, thank you. Meese tells 6 News if the money is budgeted, it will be spread out over 5 years. They expect an update sometime next month. However, if you do need resources right now, North Omaha Community Partnership and Families of the Stolen are ready to help. You can find their information with this story at WOWT.com.